Erica? Okay. Jamila? Okay.
Okay, and we are now live on YouTube, Richie.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right. I want to welcome everybody to our town hall webinar for the newly approved vaccine for children ages 5 through 11. This is a continued partnership that has been so appreciated and supportive from the Revere Board of Health and Mass General Hospital. And without further ado, I want to welcome and thank Dr. Kong, Lauren Buck, Dr. Boxer from MGH Pediatrics, and Dr. Egan from MGH Pediatrics, who are going to provide us with a wealth of information and answer any and all questions you may have about this new vaccine. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to throw it over to Dr. Kong to get us started.
Thanks, Richie. I'll just be kind of the MC for the evening. But the real stars of the show tonight are Dr. Suzanne Boxer and Dr. Harwood Egan. They are both practicing pediatricians, and they work at the MGH Revere Health Center over on Ocean Avenue. So they'll kick us off this evening, and then at the end of their slides, we'll also have Lauren Buck present the menu of options for where you and your child can get the COVID-19 vaccine. And then hopefully we'll end the first half hour or so with one of our community members telling us about her story and why she chose to get her kids vaccinated. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Boxer, and I'm going to upload her slides now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I'm going to jump right in and start by telling you I'm going to be very upfront and share with you. I'm here to talk to you as a pediatrician, but also as a mother. I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. They're up on the slide here. And I have been sharing in your day-to-day struggles dealing with COVID and all of the changes it's brought to our lives over the last 20 months. We all want the same for our kids and our families. We want them to stay safe, healthy, and happy. So what about this vaccine? It can be very exhausting to sort through all the information that's out there. Really, the best we can do as parents is to make informed decisions about what we think is best for our kids. And what do I mean by informed? I mean a decision that is based on the best scientific information that is available to us at the time. Sadly, there are a lot of myths and misinformation floating out there in the news and social media, and it can be confusing to know what to believe and what to do. And so in the next 15 to 20 minutes or so, I'm going to do my best to go over some general vaccine information, side effects and safety concerns, as well as common questions I hear day to day in the office about this particular vaccine. My hope is that by the end, you will come to the same conclusion as me and choose to vaccinate your children. And with that, let's move to the next slide. Thank you. Great. So let's start with some brief background information. As I'm sure you're all aware, COVID numbers continue to be high. US COVID cases are still averaging about 71,000 people per day. And for the week ending November 4th, approximately 1 in 4 of those cases were in children. And this trend of higher numbers in children has been consistent since the emergence of the Delta variant. In Massachusetts, over the past 2 weeks, we saw 5,000 cases of COVID in children ages 0 to 19. I guess the point I'm trying to make is that COVID, unfortunately, is not going away anytime soon. And even if we get numbers under better control, it's still going to be around with ongoing ups and downs for quite some time. This is especially important to consider as the colder weather approaches and holidays, as these has historically been related to higher numbers in New England. And so for the thumbs up, on the flip side, the good news is that COVID vaccines and boosters are helping. The number of hospitalizations and deaths in the US are improving, and we now have this new vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds. Earlier this month, as you all are aware, the Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds was approved for emergency use by the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, and recommended by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the ACIP, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. The vaccine has also been unanimously endorsed by a number of pediatric professional groups, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Family Physicians, and the Pediatric Infectious Disease Society. The fact that multiple scientists and physicians, many of whom spend their whole lives studying vaccines, feel we should be vaccinating our younger children means a lot to me. Next slide. So let's talk more about the vaccine itself. The Pfizer vaccine is free. You don't need to show an ID or insurance card to receive it. The schedule is that the vaccine is given in 2 doses, separated by 21 days or 3 weeks. After 2 weeks after the second dose, your child is considered fully immune. So in terms of the dose, the vaccine is the same exact Pfizer vaccine that has already been given to hundreds of millions of adults and adolescents, with exception of the dose. The vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds is 1/3 of the adult dose. So it is 10 micrograms instead of 30 micrograms. A lot of parents ask, is this dose going to be as effective, especially if my child weighs more or weighs less? And what I answer to them about this is that unlike medications, vaccines are historically age instead of weight-based. And this has to do with the fact that your immune response to vaccines is more closely related to the maturity of your immune system, your disease-fighting system. And in the Pfizer study for 5 to 11-year-olds, this lower dose was shown to be safe and effective for this age group. So what about the ingredients? The vaccine contains something called messenger RNA, or mRNA. And this is the part that teaches your body to make a special, what we call spike protein, that just looks like just like the spikes on the COVID vaccine, COVID virus. And up at the top of the slide, I have the picture that I'm sure you have all seen many times in news and media. Those little red spikes are what the vaccine is trying to look like. For time's sake, I'm not going to go into the science of mRNA vaccines, but for more information on how the vaccine was developed and how it works, there are 2 very great, simple videos that are out on the internet from the American Academy of Pediatrics. All you need to do is Google AAP and how mRNA vaccines work. And I highly recommend it. Great, simple explainer videos. The vaccine also contains lipids or fats, and that's just to help the mRNA get into the cells. And then a salt and sugar buffer. And that's just to keep the vaccine nice and stable until it's ready to be given. There are no preservatives, no latex, eggs, metals, gelatin, or any animal products in the vaccine. Next slide, please. So why get the vaccines? A common question I hear from patients is, why should my child get the COVID-19 vaccine if most kids don't get very sick from COVID? There are many reasons. Although COVID infection is typically milder in children than in adults, it does not mean that an infection is risk-free. Previously healthy children with COVID-19 have developed severe lung infections and MISC, multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. This is a very serious complication of COVID that can affect the heart and the vessels and can cause severe cases of myocarditis. Myocarditis is inflammation of the heart muscle. And we're going to talk about that specifically a little bit more later. As of early October this year, there have been over 5,000 documented cases of this inflammatory syndrome in children in the United States. In the 5 to 11 year range, there have been over 8,000 hospitalizations from COVID, and 1/3 of those were in otherwise healthy children. Unfortunately, in this age group, we've seen 143 deaths. And when we look at children as a whole, there have been over 600 deaths. These are not insignificant numbers. They're very real to the families that have been affected. And the way I see it, no family should ever have to lose their child to a vaccine preventable illness if we have a vaccine that is safe and works well. Which brings me to the second yellow check. This vaccine is safe and it works very well. The Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11 year olds has now been studied in over 4,000 children. The vaccine trial showed an efficacy rate of 90%. This means that it worked to prevent symptomatic COVID infection in more than 90 out of every 100 participants in the trial. We know that getting this vaccine makes us less likely to transmit COVID to others. We're still studying the magnitude of this, but we know that it helps. We know that, I'm not ready for the next slide. We know that getting the vaccine makes us, we talked about that. I'm going to talk more about safety and side effects in the next slide. Sorry, Nat, thank you for jumping ahead. I'm not quite there. I also ask parents to think about the vaccine in terms of how it will change your family and your child's everyday life. Getting the vaccine will move us closer to one day unmasking in school. It will make it safer to have unmasked play dates, play indoor sports, and to travel more safely. And again, as we approach those December holidays, it will make us feel a little bit better about being indoors with higher risk family members, including the elderly who, because of weaker immune systems, can't always mount a good response to vaccines. And finally, we need to think about the toll that COVID has taken on our communities at large and how vaccination will help protect our neighbors and the spread of COVID and potentially the emergence of new and more dangerous COVID variants. Vaccinating our children is a major step for us as a population to be able to return to some sense of normalcy after 20 months of this awful pandemic. Okay, next slide. So let's take a look at side effects from the vaccine. In general, the frequency of side effects in 5 to 11 year olds were lower than the vaccine studies of older participants. The most common side effect was pain at the injection site, seen in about 70% or 7 in 10 children, followed by fatigue and headache in about 1 in 3 children, and chills, fever, and body aches occurring less frequently, about 1 in 10 children. In the Pfizer trial for 5 to 11 year olds, there were no reported cases of myocarditis, blood clots, severe allergy, or death. And most side effects resolve within 1 to 2 days, and really are a signal that your child's immune system is learning how to protect their body against the virus if encountered in the future. It's important to note that if your child doesn't get side effects, it does not mean that the vaccine didn't work. And next slide. So finally, I want to go over some common questions that I'm hearing in clinic and from friends and neighbors. And certainly we're going to have the opportunity to hear your questions as well at the end. So the first, we talked a little bit about myocarditis. Do mRNA vaccines cause myocarditis? As many of you are aware, there are ongoing studies looking into this very rare side effect. Again, myocarditis is inflammation of the heart muscle itself. This very rare side effect has been seen primarily in adolescent males after the second dose of the vaccine. As a parent, when we hear about this potential side effect, it can feel very scary. But it's very, very important to put this risk into context. First of all, there were no cases of myocarditis in the 5 to 11-year-old vaccine trial. And most cases of myocarditis that happened in the adolescent males were very mild, and patients got better on their own with minimal treatment and rest. Compare this to the much higher risk of developing the same thing, myocarditis, from the COVID infection itself. We unfortunately see myocarditis develop in about 75% of cases of the inflammatory syndrome I spoke of earlier, the MISC. And these cases of myocarditis are generally very different. They're more severe, and they often resulted in the need for intensive care treatment. So to me, based on this information, the risk of this very rare complication is much, much greater when not vaccinating. So the second question, do mRNA vaccines reduce fertility? Trust me, as a parent, I know we want to make sure that anything we're exposing our children to is not going to cause any harm. Based on how these vaccines work and how they generate an immune response and how the mRNA breaks down and leaves the body within about a day or two, there is no scientific research that COVID-19 vaccines affect or reduce fertility. And what about long-term side effects? I get this question a lot. When we think about potential long-term side effects from vaccines, historically, we've seen that effects generally happen within about 6 weeks of receiving a vaccine dose. Serious side effects that could cause long-term health problems are extremely unlikely from this vaccine. Again, contrast this to the large number of people we are seeing with what we call long-haul COVID symptoms, sometimes lasting more than 6 months after diagnosis. These COVID vaccines have now been given to hundreds of millions of people around the world and are under incredible surveillance for any safety signals indicating a problem. This vaccine surveillance is greater than any other vaccine or medication rollout in history. So do COVID-19 vaccines change your DNA? And the answer is very simple for this one. There's no better way to say it than there is a 0 chance that mRNA vaccines can alter your DNA. There are complicated scientific explanations, but for me, the easiest way to understand it is that in order to alter your DNA, the vaccine would need to be able to enter your cell nucleus. And this vaccine contains no signals to allow it to do this, and therefore it's impossible. A lot of my parents ask, my child already had COVID-19. Do they still need a vaccine? And yes, the answer is yes. We don't know, or we do know that children develop some immunity to COVID after infection, but that immunity decreases over time. We also know that everyone's immune response to COVID is not the same, and mild or asymptomatic infection may be associated with less of an immune response. We know that people get better future protection from COVID after vaccination compared with infection alone. It is safe to get the vaccine after previous infection. And the only recommendation is that after infection, you should wait until you have fully recovered and you have cleared your isolation period. And finally, are there any children who should not get the vaccine? And right now, there are no pre-existing medical conditions that are noted to be associated with any safety concerns as it relates to getting the COVID vaccine. That being said, there are some pre-existing conditions that do put children at higher risk for severe COVID, including kids that are medically complex with genetic, metabolic, or neurologic conditions, chronic respiratory conditions, including asthma, diabetes, obesity, and some immunocompromised conditions. In terms of allergies, the only contraindication to COVID vaccine is a known allergy to an ingredient in the vaccine or a history of anaphylaxis to prior COVID infection. And the next slide. So I've done a lot of talking. I'm sure that you all still have a lot of questions, which we'll do our best to answer. But certainly outside of this talk, there's a plethora of information out there. Certainly the CDC website has a lot of great scientific-based information. The AAP, or the American Academy of Pediatrics, has a great site called healthychildren.org, and they have a whole section on COVID, as well as the CHOP, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, has a excellent vaccine education center website for all vaccines, but also has a section devoted specifically to COVID, including a large repository of questions and answers about the vaccines. And finally, we wouldn't want to forget our community pediatricians. I know I can speak for all of my colleagues and say we'd love to hear from you, your specific questions, your specific concerns. We're here to listen and we respect your decisions. Next slide. So let's take a second to take a deep breath and let all of that information sink in. I know it was a lot. I hope that you will come to the same conclusion as me and several of my physician colleagues in Massachusetts and choose to vaccinate your children. Just as a fun goodbye, I asked my colleagues to share some pictures of their kids getting vaccinated and the reasons that they or their children were excited to get the vaccine. And their responses were overwhelming. I couldn't add them all, otherwise we would have been several more slides in. But here's what a few of them had to say. I'll read them since the interpreters are helping us today. My 5-year-old wants to be like Hulk and smash COVID. This 6-year-old hates shots, but made a healthy choice to keep his family safe. To finally travel safely again. He has his eye on Mexico. Next slide. We want to eat in restaurants again and have indoor play dates. I want to go to Disney World. Peace of mind. And my 12th birthday sleepover party planning is already in progress. Next slide. He wrote his best friend's name on a Post-it note, took it with him to the clinic, and said his buddy's name over and over while getting his vaccine. Why? His best friend is high risk, and he knows the connection of how his vaccine would protect his buddy. That one made me tear up a little. My 11-year-old wants to be part of the solution and set a good example for her friends. So I can go to a Red Sox game in real life. And finally, some truth, because you made me, LOL. COVID shot 1 is done and we brought home a new friend. He is excited to have Christmas Eve celebration at Grammy and Grampy's house again this year. And finally, no more quarantining. Girlfriend has gymnastic practices to get to. So thank you so much for listening. I know this is a busy hour in everyone's household. I'll end with a slide of my kids and their neighbors who are super excited indoor play dates with each other again. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Boxer, for that wonderful slide. I also loved the ending and all the reasons why all these children of varying ages chose to get the vaccine. We are going to move on to the next slide. I'm going to introduce Lauren Buck, the director of the Revere Department of Public Health, and she's going to go over some upcoming opportunities for all of the Revere parents to take their children to so that they can get their COVID vaccines.
Hi, everybody. So this slide gives you some places to look for a COVID vaccine. It is not exhaustive by any means. There are many places that aren't on this slide where you can also get a vaccine. But these are some vaccine clinics that are close to us where potentially you'll be able to go. So the first option is East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. If anyone has a child who is a patient of East Boston, they are accepting appointments for vaccine clinics already. This is for patients only of East Boston Neighborhood Health Center. I have put the phone number on the slide. It's 617-568-4500, and they are doing an appointment only. They are scheduling by appointment only, and they are already scheduling and have already started vaccinating. The next clinic that I wanted to let you know about is a walk-up clinic only. This one is in Somerville. It's hosted by Cambridge Health Alliance, or CHA. Again, it's a walk-up only, so there's you do not have to be a patient of Cambridge Health Alliance. You can go to the address on the slide, which is 176 Somerville Ave, on the times listed below. That's Monday, 11 to 6:30, Tuesday, 11 to 6:30, and Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 8:30 to 4. The one thing I will say about this Somerville option is because it's a walk-up clinic, the lines can get long and it can be very busy. But this is a great option if you are looking to get a clinic get a vaccine at a place where you don't have to be a patient of that clinic. They will accept everyone who walks up. MGH is also doing vaccines, and they are accepting vaccine appointments for their patients. The phone number I put for the main line is 781-485-6000. And so they are accepting appointments for MGH patients as well. And then the last opportunity that I will talk to you about is the vaccine clinic that thankfully Revere Public Schools is helping us host in coordination with the MGH, so Mass General Hospital mobile van. This is the van that's been in Revere since the beginning of the pandemic. It's you should feel very safe with the staffing of this van. It's staffed by MGH physicians and nurses and medical assistants. Previously, they've been doing they've been doing COVID testing. They've also been doing vaccines for other age groups here in the city, but we're doing a special kids focused clinic this Thursday on the 18th. We're going to be at 2 elementary and middle schools on either side of the city. So from 2:30 to 4:30, we're going to be at Garfield Elementary and Middle, and from 5 to 7, we're going to be at Whalen Elementary and Susan D. Anthony. This is a walk-up clinic. You don't need to pre-register. There might be a bit of a line to help with some anxiety that kids might have while waiting in line or getting a vaccine. We are having some fun things come to this clinic. We're going to have a face painter and actually 2 support dogs who will be on site to help with any kiddos who have some fears, which we completely understand. We ask you to be patient for us if you come to this clinic. We will be doing more of these clinics. This is the first one. And the other thing I would say is we know that the Pfizer, as Dr. Boxer explained, is a 2-dose vaccine. So the van, if you get your first dose with us this Thursday, you will get your second dose in the same location 3 weeks later. And that is on December 9th, which we will make sure you know about before you leave on the 18th. So this is a really great opportunity. Hopefully we bring a little bit of fun to the event, and we hope to see you all there. And again, thank you, Dr. Kelly and Dr. Galucci, for helping us with this cool event. So those are just some options of some places that you can take your child to get vaccinated. Again, there are many other options. You can always go to vaxfinder.mass.gov to get all the options close to us in Revere. Thank you so much.
And I also want to point out too that the MGH mobile van, you do not need to be an MGH patient. They'll accept any child, and actually they'll also give adult vaccines. So if you as a parent want to get your shot or a booster with your child on Thursday, you can definitely do that too. And for our very last event, before we break for question and answer, I'm going to introduce Maddie Alvarez, who I feel like needs no introduction. I feel like she's very well known in the community. And I just wanted to give her some space to talk about her experience getting her children vaccinated and why she did it. So thank you, Maddie.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I know some of you have questions or concerns, are confused, but we're here together. My name is Maria Alvarez, and I'm a mom of 4 kids. I have 3 kids at the Revere Public School, 1 in the middle school and 2 in the elementary school. I work for the city of Revere as a campus coordinator, and I'm volunteer for the Hispanic community page on the social media. And tonight I'm here to share a little bit more about my experience and having my family getting vaccinated. So why do we choose to get our children to get vaccinated? Because it can help our children to stay in school and get back to normal activities without wearing a mask. It is safe and it works very well. 9 days ago, we had the opportunity to have my 3 daughters to get vaccinated with the first doses. They did show mild side effects, pain in the injection site, in the upper arm, and a little bit of fever, but after 2 days, they were totally fine. My husband and I, we decided to vaccinate them because we noticed science, they starting to go to school this year. They were with symptoms, worry us if they have the COVID or they just regular cold, wondering if it was safe to send them to the school or not, doing COVID testing. So now with the vaccine that is available from 5 to 11, we decide to do the COVID vaccine because we know that it's very effective in preventing being in the hospital and the risk to be, for the death. I believe the COVID vaccine helps prevent or reduce the spread of the virus. Like the adults, children also can transmit the coronavirus to others if they have been infected or even when they have no symptoms. Getting the COVID-19 vaccine can protect the child and others, reducing the chance that they transmit the virus to others, and including the family members and friends who may not be in danger of severe consequences of infection, especially now that the holidays are coming. We want to make sure and spread the word out that get the kids get the vaccine for the safe for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Before we switch over to Q&A, I wanted to also invite Dr. Harwood Egan. Do you have any comments before we break for a question and answer? I didn't know if you had anything else to add, Dr. Egan.
Dr. Box's presentation was extremely thorough, but hello to all of you out there. Just a few things that parenting is hard, and parenting through this pandemic has been very difficult. And we know the ones who are here tonight are being very thoughtful. The fact that you're coming to listen by itself shows that you're thinking about it. You know that we love your children. We have loved your children for many years, and we continue to love them. and we respect you as parents. Our job is not to convince you what to do or tell you what to do. It's to help you do what you do all along, which is to guide your kids in the safest way possible. And we understand any hesitancy you would have. This is New England, and we learn to drive in winter. And we know that lots of people get injured in winter, and yet we go ahead and we drive because we in New England know how to assess the risk of winter driving. We take the right precautions, and then we go about going to the grocery store and preparing ourselves for winter holidays. And I think COVID is a new risk in our lives that we're just beginning to get used to. And learning how to manage this risk is what we're doing. The vaccination is just one more tool to get us to a point where we can manage risk in a very safe way. And so I would leave you with that thought that this is a way to kind of move forward. Nothing's a guarantee, but this is a gift. The way this vaccine was made, this is a real gift. And lots of people in the third world would line up to get this because they're not as lucky as we are. So we hope you'll reach the conclusions that we do, but we understand that this is a process. And we understand that if you have questions along the way, our job is to help you with these questions. So no question is not worth asking. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. All right, Richie, I'm going to kick it to you. We'll start taking as many questions as you guys have for us. So bring it on.
Nice. We have quite a few on both sites. So Dr. Kelly and I are going to alternate. So I will pose the first question. The first question simply asks, am I better off waiting? My daughter will turn 12 years old next month, or should I have her take it now as an 11-year-old?
I can take that. The answer is simply don't wait. Experts have been dealing with this. When she's 11, she'll get the dose for 5 to 11. And when she's 12, she'll get the full dose. And we expect that the immunogenicity will be the same. There's no reason to wait. The holidays are coming up. The sooner they get vaccinated, the sooner they'll be protected.
And if I could just pose one more because it relates to what you just said, Dr. Egan. Another question came in about the differences between the two doses, the one for children ages 5 to 11 and the dose for children 12 or older or into adulthood. Can you just describe the differences between the two and similarities?
They, as usual, what they try to do is get the most bang for the buck. So they look very carefully at what was the amount of medicine, of vaccine they needed to get the right response. So they did these bridging studies where they compared how much a lower dose would be compared to the higher dose. And they found that the lower dose was just as effective. So for younger kids, they don't need more than 10 micrograms to get the full, we call it immunogenicity, which means the full effect of the vaccine. And they also found, meaning that it made the same amount of antibodies in your body as the higher dose. And they found it was just as efficacious. Does that help answer it, Rich?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Kelly.
Thanks, Richie. The next question is really about the development of the protocol for younger kids. And I'm actually going to combine a couple here that are similar. How many kids were involved in the trial and what ages were they? And then what are the Massachusetts number of cases for kids, if we know either of those?
I can start, Harwood. So the Pfizer vaccine trial started out with about 1,500 kids, ages 5 to 11. I don't have the breakdown, I'm sorry, of exactly how many of each age. But as time went on, we decided as a the scientific community that we needed to look at even greater numbers. So right now the trial includes up to 4,000, and I believe they're even adding additional kids onto that number. And then, sorry, Diane, what was the second part?
The second part was, what are the number of cases, and I think it means positive COVID cases among younger kids in Massachusetts as opposed to in the United States?
I touched on that. Let me just bring up my slide. So I would have to look at the specific numbers for this week. For recently, over the last 2 weeks, I think I quoted there were 5,000 cases of COVID in children. But certainly you're looking at from the very beginning of the pandemic to now.
I don't think we know the exact numbers. Maybe Nat, you might, for Massachusetts.
You can find it very easily just looking online. I can get back to you in 1 minute.
All right, Richie, why don't you go to the next question? We can come back to that one.
All right, the next question is from a family member who has a student that has asthma and just asked to talk about the vaccination in relation to a child with asthma.
Sure. Meaning, is it safe or should you get it?
Yes, both probably. Yep.
Yes, one could speak to that clearly. Asthma happens to be one of those conditions that we might worry about. Children are different than adults, but there's no contraindication to getting it. If anything, it would be the reverse. We would urge you to get it because we would worry about the risk of not getting it if you have asthma.
Okay. Dr. Kelly.
Sure. Lauren, I'm going to go to this one. It was a clarifier for when the van is going to be at the Wayland School. I think that we said here on the webinar that it started at 5, but apparently there's a flyer out there that says 4:30.
Yeah, this is a great clarification. Thank you for bringing this up. We originally posted on our flyer that the times were going to be shorter than they actually are going to be at each school. Because of the turnout that the mobile van has been having at other clinics, we're expanding the timeframes. So yes, we are starting at Wayland at 5 p.m., not 4:30. If you get there at 4:30, we'll have staff there to help get some paperwork completed. But we will be at the Wayland from 5 to 7. And the reason we changed it, I apologize for some confusion. But again, we want to allow as much time as possible at each school because of the turnout that the mobile van has been seeing at other clinics. So just to clarify, and we will send out a revised flyer with revised times tomorrow or the next day, but we will be at Garfield from 2:30-ish, 2:40-ish till 4:30, and at Wayland Elementary School and Susan B. Anthony from 5 to 7. Thank you.
Great.
All right. The next few questions that I have are related to specific allergies. And I know, Dr. Boxer, you had said that the child's pediatrician is the greatest resource, especially for questions that are very specific. But just to raise a few that have been brought up, one asks about an allergy to amoxicillin and whether or not that child would be eligible for the vaccine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that is not a contraindication.
Another asks about an allergy to eggs and the flu vaccine, and whether or not that child would be eligible and should take the vaccine.
Yeah, so there are no eggs in the COVID-19 vaccine. So absolutely, and having a flu vaccine allergy or an egg allergy is not applicable to this. The only ingredients are the mRNA, the fats, and the salt and sugar buffer.
So we had a similar question on YouTube about whether the flu vaccine interferes with the COVID vaccine, or if there should be any concerns around taking those at the same time. And then also, will these kids need to get a booster X months down the road, the way adults are starting to now.
Okay. So you can definitely get the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine at the same time. The next question is all these questions, I would say, are very good questions. I should have said that initially. They're all very, very astute. It's a good question. We don't know. We don't know how the immunity will wane over time in children compared to adults. So I think right now, there's no way to know for sure.
And Diane, just to go back to your question, I'm having trouble finding exact numbers of kids, but if you go to COVID-19mass.gov, you get a breakdown of all the cases actually by age 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 to 19 over the last 2 weeks. And then in general, you can extrapolate that knowing that cases in children are about 25% or 1 in 4 cases of adults that we're seeing in kids. So I don't think that the exact number is the key point here, but certainly we're seeing more and more cases in children.
Great. And Dr. Gallucci, that is all of the questions from YouTube.
Awesome. I have a few more on the Zoom. One family member asks, my son will have the vaccine this week. My question is whether or not I can give him some medicine for the pain or fever that may follow.
Yes. It doesn't, taking a medicine for side effects from the vaccine won't interfere with the way the vaccine works.
Okay. Someone did ask, but it was prior to Lauren's presentation about MGH offering vaccines. So we know that that will be going on. But there is another question, Lauren, that asks, will there be more dates added for the MGH mobile van? And if so, would they be posted?
Yes, there will be more dates for the MGH mobile van. They won't be until December. So the MGH mobile van option before the Thanksgiving holiday is only on the 18th. But there will be opportunities after the Thanksgiving holiday to have more clinics, yes.
And we did have one more allergy question come in. This time it is connected to penicillin and whether or not someone who is allergic to penicillin can get the vaccine.
And
Yes.
I'll add to that, there is a new one on the YouTube channel about if it's safe for children with autoimmune diseases.
It is, but certainly some children that have autoimmune diseases are on medications that might make them immunocompromised. So that would be one that you would want to discuss specifically with your pediatrician. But sorry, and the penicillin is the same family as amoxicillin, and that is absolutely fine. It's not a contraindication to getting the vaccine.
I also want to point out the penicillin question mentioned that the patient's son is 13 years old. I know we're focusing on 5 to 11 because they are the ones that are newly eligible. But if your son who is 13 years old wants to come on Thursday, yes, absolutely. We are obviously focusing on the 5 to 11 age range. But if you are 12 and up, and if you're a parent and want to get the vaccine with your child, it can be a family affair.
We did have a very specific question about a 12-year-old from a middle school who had her first dose on October 23rd. And they asked, can they get the second dose at the MGH van on November 18th?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, second doses will be given out. As Dr. Kong mentioned, booster doses can be given. First dose, second dose can all be given at the van. I will just say, we're not sure what the turnout is going to be like on the 18th. So I ask everyone to be patient with us while we try out this model. There could be a line, and we will try to do everything we can to make sure that it moves quickly. Keeping in mind too that there will be more options coming up to at the schools, as well as hopefully other places throughout the city. But yes, he will be able to get his second dose vaccine on the 18th.
And Lauren, do they have to bring any documentation when they're receiving a second dose?
Oh, great question. Please bring the white vaccine card that you got at the first dose clinic if you're coming for either a booster or a second dose.
That brought up a good question, or a good point, is that a parent needs to be with the child to sign a consent. So for all children 18 and under, a consent form needs to be signed.
And so that leads me to, ask one quick clarifier. For the clinics on the 18th, we know that they're available to anybody, but are we specifically trying to prioritize the kids who would need to come with an adult?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're targeting. And obviously any child under the age of 18 needs to be accompanied by an adult who can sign a consent form. Having said that, the MGB ban, they do not like to turn away anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just to echo what Lauren said, this is a new model we're trying, and we're trying to make it very convenient for everyone, but there may be lines. So we'll try to get through them as best as we can.
And we did have a question about whether or not a 4-year-old child could get vaccinated at this point.
Not yet, but coming soon.
Okay.
I don't know the exact timing, but that is hopefully going to be something we see in the new year.
Nice.
Well,
All
I'll
right.
just share that there's several thank yous in the chat on the YouTube, which I'm sure are addressed to Dr. Boxer and Dr. Egan and Dr. Kong and Lauren, and definitely Maddie for her input. I know there's never anything as helpful as hearing from somebody of your own group. So hearing from moms about this and expert doctors is hugely helpful to everybody.
One more thing, just to be, even when you're vaccinated, we still need to be careful in certain contexts that this will protect your kid. But if you're in crowded places and you don't know, but if you know the vaccination status for the holidays, you're doing great. But if you're going to public places where there's crowding, you really need to wear a mask anyway. And so just to be careful, we're not out of the woods with this. We're way ahead of the curve, but clearly wear your mask if you're in public places that are crowded or indoors.
Okay.
All right. Does anyone have any closing remarks, seeing that there are no questions? All right.
Just a great big thank you.
Yeah, huge thank you to everyone. Thank you, Kayla, Erica, Jamila, Maddie, Lauren, Dr. Kong, Dr. Boxer, Dr. Egan, Dr. Kelly. Thank you all so much. This is such a valuable service to our school communities, and we can't express how much we appreciate it.
We're there for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.